What people will recognize is when they are living in alignment with their values, their decision making is simplified and they're living in alignment with their own values. When a team plays together, they stay together. That idea of that it has to be all or nothing, it doesn't serve anyone, especially not ourselves. So giving ourselves that grace and that we're doing the best with what we know in the moment. Everything is connected. And what tends to happen as people focus on one area of their life that they want to improve, everything else tends to spiral upward.
Welcome to the Leadership in Love podcast. We will cover leadership, mindset, personal development, and sales and marketing. You will experience thought-provoking conversations with both nationally and internationally recognized leaders. Our goal is to inspire you and deliver actionable items that you can implement that are going to help you accelerate your growth. Get ready to discover the magic and the power when you lead with love.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of Leadership in Love. I'm really excited and blessed today because I have a very, very dear friend of mine back for a second time. And for those of you that have been following the podcast, rarely do I have somebody back a second time. So it speaks volumes about, one, how much I value her wisdom and intelligence, and also how near and dear she is to my heart. So welcome back, Deonne.
Thank you, Louie. So great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. You're quite welcome. Is there anything you'd like to share with the listeners before we get started? You know, bio, that kind of stuff that's changed since the last time we spoke?
Wow, because it's been maybe 6 or 7 months. Feels like it was last summer.
Yeah, it has been.
That's so fun. You know, there's a quote that says people underestimate what they can do in 10 years and overestimate what they can do in one. And if that's true, which I believe it is, it feels like I better buckle up because in the last 6 months, I've published a book and I have another one that is close to being published. The wait list is open.
Yeah, as well as your speaking schedule has gotten very busy as well. So yeah, you're definitely on a rocket ship ride in the right direction.
Yes.
If you would share with our listeners the title of your book, please.
It's called From Tired to Inspired. Oh, look, it's right up here on my bookshelf behind me.
Yeah, for those of you who are just listening, not watching, in her background on her bookshelf is her book. So there's a number of things that I'd like to talk about today. The first thing that I think is just so cool is at the beginning of your book, you talk about how when you were in the stuff, right, in some of your darkest times, your darkest hours, you were looking for a book and couldn't find exactly what you wanted and, more importantly, needed to find your way out of the darkness. And I love the that analogy, right? I was telling a business owner recently, we all share and sell the same thing, transformation, right? We're taking people from the darkness to the light. And so I thought it was fascinating that you wrote your book from that inspiration of you couldn't find it out there in the marketplace, which is always a great indication there's a need, right? So I'd like you to talk about a little bit about the layout of your book and how you created it the way you did, because I think it's fascinatingly unique in that there's just a plethora of wisdom and learning and growth available in it. But really it's structured in a way that's got things that you go practice. It's partly journal, partly workbook, partly a book that you read to learn. So talk about that a little bit, please.
That for sure has to do with my PhD in instructional design and adult learning theory, because as adults, we want to learn, but we also want to apply. We want the space, in this case, within the book to do it ourselves. So I think even stepping back one step further, what I want to share is how did this book come to be? And so I've been, playing with the outline for years. And then there was one day that I sat down at my piano and I played for 3 hours, not with any intention of anything, but I really wanted to cultivate more joy in my life. And music tends to be great therapy for me. And at one point, I kind of had this little divine nudge that said, okay, I've played enough. Now it's time to go to work. And it was a little bit like Elizabeth Gilbert when she talks about the muses, how they tap on somebody's shoulder and say, there's something that needs to be done. Are you going to listen and take action? And I did the outline, like fine tuned my outline probably over the next day or so. And I knew that every chapter was going to have a tool, a strategy, like a hard, an application that would help them. I knew I wanted to have space within the book for people to do the work. I knew I wanted it to be a bullet journal type of thing. So if people were more artistic and wanted to draw, there weren't going to be lines that were hardcore, narrow, or college ruled or wide ruled, because that feels confining when you just want to brain dump. And I knew I wanted to interweave in my own story of how these different tools and strategies had transformed my life. So, really, it came as a result of cultivating that I wanted to write the book that I would have liked to have read when I was in the depths, but pairing that with joy and then listening to those divine nudges. And it really feels like this book came through me. I feel so honored to be the human that brings it to life.
So for our listeners, so she's dropping golden nuggets again right out of the chute. So I want to highlight a couple of things that she just said. I'm a huge believer in fun. If you're not having fun every day, stop the presses and figure out how to have fun. And fun doesn't, you don't need to spend money to have fun. It's not
Mm-hmm.
some big deal. You can spend 5-10 minutes. One of the things that's really fun for me is to drain a shower out of hot water, a bubble bath. I'm the same way, Deonne. I love to play music. It's a great way to just let the rest of the world go away. But whatever you're doing as a listener, figure out how to have fun every day. I believe if you don't have fun every day, you've lost a day. The other thing that she said when she opened herself up to that fun, it also opened her up to this thing called divine inspiration, intervention, whatever you want to call it. But she was open to that and heard the call. And it, like she said, it tapped her on the shoulder. So there's a lot of things we could talk about. I don't want to go down that road today, but if you're not spending some time in the silence, out in nature, prayer, meditation, reading, find a way to do that, because I love that, you know, when we pray, it's us talking to whoever it is for you, universe, God, source. And when we're quiet or meditate, it's us listening. So thanks for being brave enough to birth this thing in the world, because you were apparently, obviously, the one that birthed it. She also said something else very powerful. When you let go, I've had this experience a number of times playing music live in front of people, and I have it every time when I speak. And I know you do a lot of speaking now too, and that's it. Just moves through us, right? When we just open up to let it be what it's supposed to be, it moves through us. There's a lot of great information in your book. What I really want to dive into today with you, and then I've got a chapter that I'd like you to talk about, and I'd like you to pick a chapter that's one of your favorites that might be helpful as well. But for the one I'd like to get to today for you to pick your brain about for our listeners is core values. So
Mm.
I'd like you to explain, one, why core values are so important, and two, how do people discover them, find them, decide on them?
I love the quote that goes, if everything's important, nothing's important. And I actually, hi, Ryan. I'll have to share this with my friend Ryan, who I ended up hiring when I was a manager at a large ed tech company. And he said that in his interview. And I was like, I need more of this wisdom in my regular daily life. And I think that leads directly into core values. If you are trying to accomplish, or you have 10 values that are driving your life, it becomes a distraction because that's too many. If you can narrow it down to your top 3 and say, these are the ones that really matter to me in this season of my life, it doesn't mean that you're committed to them for the next 10 years. Maybe it's only 6 months, maybe it's a year. And paired with that, identifying your core values, which I'll come back to how you can do that in just a minute, but is doing an audit and looking at your calendar, looking at how you're spending your money, looking at how you're spending your energy. Are they supporting what you say is important? Because if I say adventure is important to me, which it is, am I spending time doing that? Am I spending money doing that? Is my energy going to that? And adventure doesn't always mean a plane ticket on the other side of the world. It might be trying a new recipe or trying a new restaurant or going to a new Pilates class. Like, it doesn't have to be this huge, time intensive, and very expensive thing. But what people will recognize is when they are living in alignment with their values, their decision making is simplified and they're living in alignment with their own values.
Ho, 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 stop the presses. So say that again about decision making.
Yes, it's simplified because if you know what's important to you, then you can say yes to what's important and you can say no to the things that aren't aligned with your values.
So can you give an example or a story of that when you've so I know your speaking schedule's gotten very busy and you've been a coach consultant for a long time, but can you give us an example of somebody or an audience with something that you've spoken to recently where you really gave them an example of how that works?
Yeah, I'll think about this weekend on Saturday. I spoke to two different groups, and impact is important to me, and especially having impact with women that are in a place of transition where they want to do something different. So it was a nonprofit organization that had two different cohorts and two different. I live in Utah, so they were based out of Utah. And these women are obviously in a place of transition because they're trying to level up their skills, mostly with technology. So obviously for them, growing their skill set is important. So they're going to spend their time and their money so that they can get to essentially like the next level in their life. And for me, why did I say yes? Because that organization aligns with my values. They're helping women improve their life. And one of my other core values is impact. So if I can go and speak to two groups of women and there's 25, 50 women in a room, then that's a for sure yes for me. On the other hand, if I was invited to go speak to a group of middle schoolers, not that I don't love them, but if my choice was to talk to women or to middle schoolers on the same day, I'm going to say yes to the women that are my ideal client.
Yeah, so that's a very good example. And one of the things, so let's and one of the things I love about everything in your book, and it's true of life, and you and I have our kindred spirits because there's so many cool things that we do in our lives on a regular basis, right? But I'd like you to talk about for our listeners how important it, and how one thing is how we do everything, and everything's connected.
Mhm.
How or can you explain to them not only that should they have core values individually, but the importance of core values in the organization that they're leading?
Yes. So everybody, it feels like everybody has a mission and a purpose and their core values and their vision. Like that seems to be something that you do maybe when you start up a company or when you've got a few employees. And I'll say when I was a leader with a large team, I had 18 people that were reporting to me. We would focus on a core value every month. And not only would we say transparency is the core value, but we would also talk about what does that mean and what behaviors align with that value. And then we would do a check in and say, how has openness, how has collaboration, like what is changing as a result of this being our core values? You can't just put posters on the wall and say, here's our 3 or 5 or 29 core values. And as I say, 29, that's way too many. I would say, as an organization, you really don't want more than 5. I know that's hard for people to narrow that down. Some people have 7. But yeah, if everything's important, nothing's important. And what's changing on your team and at the organization level as a result of being reminded that your behavior needs to align with those core values?
Yeah, yeah, very, very, very powerful. And I appreciate that wisdom. Well, and again, for our listeners, what she's talking about is the same thing. You can put all kinds of crap on the wall, but it's the old, are you walking the walk? And so, what are you doing on a regular basis to reinforce, to practice, to study, even to define what that specific word means? I also am in agreement with her, Deonne. I'll let people go as far as 6, right? But everybody on the team, and I want listeners to understand, you should have your personal core values. When you go to work for a company or an organization, if you're not the leader, then their core values really need to be overlapping with yours at least 75% of the time. Otherwise, it's not a good fit. And the next piece of this is if you're leading that organization, everybody on the team should know those core values by heart. Would you agree?
Yes. And it might take a little bit of time and space and development to get them there, but people should know what the company's core values are, or your leadership team is not doing a good job.
Say that again.
Whose job is it to enforce the core values and to do training on these? It's really the leaders. So if your employees don't know the company's core values, then that responsibility, I think, goes back up to the leaders. They're not doing a good job enforcing, promoting, educating, talking, walking the walk.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And so if you're listening to this and you're a leader, and that's my premise, that everybody's a leader, even if you're just leading yourself, and everybody is in business for themselves, right? They run a corporation called themselves. So so I'd like to share a couple of mine with you and with the audience. And so one of I actually have three. I have two that kind of move around a little bit, depending, like you said, the season I'm in. But I have three that are hardcore that never leave. Actually, that's probably not true. I have four that are hardcore that never leave. One of them is personal responsibility, right? I want to, whatever's not working in my life, I'm well aware that it's me that's jacking it up. The other three, love, which is why one of the reasons why I started this podcast, right? I believe we can do everything with love. Fun, like we just talked about, I believe. And I'd like to challenge you, if you're the leader of an organization or a family. For those of you that may not know, Deonne's a single mom, has been for a while, and doing a great job raising kids and being a coach and a speaker and now an author, a published author, and all those things. And so you can put fun into everything, everywhere, right? It's the same as you were just talking about. As the leader, you just have to be aware that that's your job. And so the and then service, right? I think we're all here to be of service to somebody. So I'd like you to talk about, at this point in the business world, how do you use those core values again for decision making?
Well, I think as you were referencing fun, it makes me think about the large team that I was leading, and we would have an activity usually once a month. And again, it wasn't super expensive. One of our activities was to collaborate on a virtual cookbook. And so everybody put in a couple of their favorite recipes. And then one day, and we're distributed across at least 4 or 5 different time zones, we all logged into Zoom. We picked out a recipe that we were going to make from somebody else. So everybody's making their own thing, but we had our cameras on and we're all in our kitchen and we're laughing and cooking. It wasn't super expensive. But I think the important part of that is when a team plays together, they stay together. So, what is fascinating is I have been gone from that organization over 2 years, and there still is somebody that I meet with about every week. We have a reoccurring one on one, or, like a connection point to support each other. There's another team member that I meet with every 3 weeks, and there's another one that I meet every 5 weeks. And then I have others beyond that. But I think that says something with, as a leader, that people are still connected to me after I've been gone more than 2 years.
Yeah. Well, that's because in those core values, when you live them, excuse me, it builds really strong foundational relationships, correct? There's
Yes.
a connectedness of heart, of like-mindedness, of caring, of giving, of serving, of creating, whatever those things are, that happens in those relationships. And then you really feel like you're making an impact in the world. One of the things that's come to me, I don't know if I've shared this with you in the past or not, but probably 6 or 7 years ago, the big light went off, and I realized, I don't care who you are, you don't accomplish anything by yourself. As much as we'd like to think, yeah, I wrote this book and I did this and I did blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's true. But somebody did a whole lot of other things for you to make that happen and make that work. I'd like to move to another chapter. If you could pick another chapter from your book, and I'd like you to think about this chapter in two ways. Like I said, for our audience, Deonne's been speaking for a while, but that's gotten really busy because of her book and some other things. So what's a chapter you'd like to talk about? And you're holding up a finger, so you go first and then I'll go.
Yeah, I feel like the other thing to think about from a leader point of view is something that has been kind of percolating in my brain for the last 6 months, because I've looked at the people that I hired and I've noticed how many of those are in a leadership role at this point. And it's probably about 65%. And so I think the sign of a good leader, one of the indications, is your ability to help create other leaders, which is pouring into them, investing in them, believing in them. Because my guess is, Louie, that somebody believed in you, and that's why you're at where you are today. And I can for sure identify other mentors in my own life that poured into me, believed in me, and it's my opportunity, not even responsibility, but like gift, to do that for others.
Yeah. So thank you for interrupting me to share that, because I completely agree. My word is grow, right? I think it's our job to grow leaders. And,
Mm-hmm.
and in this podcast, I've said it many times in the past, everybody's a leader, right? Even if you're pumping gas at the gas station, somebody's watching you, you're setting an example, you're a role model for somebody. So thanks for sharing that. And I do agree with you wholeheartedly. I think it's one of the things we do to ensure a better future for our families, for our organizations, and for the world in general, right? To grow, educate, mentor, teach, whatever your words are, leaders that are coming up behind us, so that they know what to do, the behaviors and the practices, right? You're a great role model yourself, that these people are still connected to you years after you've left the organization. That speaks volumes about you, about your heart, about your integrity, all of those things. So now I'd like you to think about another chapter in your book that I'd like to discuss today, that one is near and dear to your heart, and two, you've done a lot more speaking recently, that you're speaking on in front of audiences on a regular basis, that's really finding its mark and landing.
Yeah, the timing of this conversation is perfect, because again, on Saturday, I talked to people and it was about chapter 1 and pairing that with chapter 12. So chapter 1 has a diagram in it that's influenced by the wheel of life or Maslow's hierarchy of needs or ancient wisdom, and there's a flower. So for people that are watching this on YouTube or whatever, I'll give this visual. But it's assessing, where are you at? So you're in the middle, and then there's 12 different petals on the flower. And some of them are about your foundational needs, your work and contribution, your home and surroundings, your money and finances. Some of them are about connection with other people, your family, romantic connection, friends. Some are about who you are on the physical and emotional level. So physical vitality, creativity and play, emotional well-being, and the other kind of your top level needs, your personal growth, your spirituality, your legacy and impact. And what I love is having this at the beginning of the book as kind of no judgment, just like, where are you today? And what petal gets to have the most attention? And at the end of the book, there's the same framework that's presented. So you can kind of assess, now that I've applied these different tools and strategies throughout the book, how does my life look different? And again, it goes like back to my instructional design, right? Like a pre and post survey or pre and post assessment. Where are you today and where do you want to be and how do you get there?
Oh my goodness. So again, you just make my heart go pitter patter. So one of the things that I love, I use the same thing in her book, and I've seen it from other places, and I got it originally from Jack Canfield. It's like a bullseye, right? Not only does she have this picture of like a daisy with all these petals, and you're the circle in the middle of the daisy, but there's, in her book, it looks like a bullseye, and these different areas or parts of your life are 8 of them around the parameter or the exterior of the circle, and then you rate that area of your life from 1 to 10. So, for example, what's your financial situation look like right now? What are your relationships with your family and friends? What's your work career environment looking like, and so on? And then what you do is you connect the dots, and it makes some sort of shape. And I'd like you to talk about 2 things, actually, Deonne. I'd like you to talk about how everything is connected, and I'd also like you to talk about how powerful it is to just turn your attention to one area of your life, and how turning your attention to one area of your life increases every area of your life.
Yeah, I feel like I want to start with that one because I joined a mastermind group maybe like 6 weeks ago. So there's like 8 or 10 women, and we've set goals and then we report. And the idea of that which you measure matters. And so this is fascinating too, because what I have been tracking on a scale of 1 to 5 is my joy. Every day on a scale of 1 to 5, did I do something that brought joy into my life? And then the other commitment that I made to myself and to something higher than me was visibility. So on a scale of, I've been very active on Substack. So am I engaging in direct messages? Am I doing a weekly article that brings value to other people? I have a post launching tomorrow on change management and how to shorten the time that you're in this dip of implementation. And then the other thing I'm tracking is my direct outreach. And what's been fascinating for me is as I honor that commitment to myself to cultivate joy every day and to be visible, to track what the outcomes are. So these are the ones that I can measure. These are my lead indicators. This is based off the book, The 12-Week Year. And what's been fascinating is that the lag indicators, it's not a direct result like, oh, I posted here and then somebody reached out to have me do a speaking engagement. It feels much larger than that. It's, I posted a thing, I'm honoring the commitment that I made to myself, and the universe, God, can't help but conspire on your behalf. There was 1 week where I had 7 people reach out to me for podcasts or speaking engagements or collaboration opportunities. They weren't directly related to the action, and yet they were.
Well, so I think that the answer is yes, because everything's connected, right? So for our
Yes.
listeners, she said something, I phrase it a little differently. You can't manage it if you don't measure it. And that's what she said in different words. So get busy keeping score on something. And I want to share with our listeners, even when I do some consulting with people and business consulting and personal coaching, even relationships, right? If you and I are in a relationship and I want to make our relationship better, I can measure that, right? I can say I'm going to set 5 hours a week for 5, and they could be 5 hours at one time. It could be 5 1-hour sessions, but I'm going to set 5 hours of quality time with Deonne. No telephones, no TV, nothing but just Deonne Louie time, right? And at that point, and so you can even measure your relationships to set a goal for that to be better. And one of the things that she's talking about is she just focused on 2 things. And I love, it's funny because when you say that, I've actually heard, I hear your voice in my head. I mean this because Deonne and I have done some really cool stuff together, but I can tell you that I've heard her say too many times to count, if everything is important, nothing is important. And I hear her voice in my head when I say that to myself. It's actually her voice saying it to me. So this is a great example of her walking the walk. You just focus on whatever you want or whatever's important. And at that point, just focusing on that, I think it is direct, but I think you said something very important that I want all of our listeners, all of our leaders to understand. When you're going to grow a new leader, or when you're working on yourself and growing, and this is one of the things. So can I pull back the curtain a little bit, Deonne?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm here for all of it.
I know you are. But so one of the things that's really cool about Deonne is this whole visibility thing is way out of her comfort zone. She's way out over her skis. Speaking Olympics and skis, she's way out over her skis. But she's in a growth mode. She's in I'm going to go make this thing bigger, better. I'm going to be bigger, better. And so to do that, you got to get out of your comfort zone. So this visibility thing for her, and she's very confident. She's very established. She's got it all together. I tell her she's the complete package. My point to this is that even when we're living in that space, we've got room to grow, right? We've got things we can measure and things we can do to move the needle. So let's go back to the beginning. Now that you talked about how it's interconnected and you need to measure it, actually, before we move on, I'd like you to talk about grace. Self-grace, self-forgiveness. So if we're measuring something and we're going to do something every day, or we're going to do whatever it might be, 5 push-ups a day, this, that, or the other thing, what do you share with audiences when you speak, as well as your clients when you're consulting, on how to give themselves grace and forgiveness and then get back on the bike?
I think that pairs really well with goal setting strategy. And this is actually something I learned from Tiffany Peterson, because I'm very familiar with the SMART goals. They should be specific and measurable and actionable, etc. But in one of her seminars that I attended, which is a common friend, Tiffany Peterson, for Louie and I, she gave the suggestion, and this strategy is in my book as well. What's your ideal? So, say you're going to start going to the gym. What's your ideal number of times or time at the gym? 3 days, 30 minutes a day, whatever it is. And then also, what's your stretch? So, like on a really good week, I'm going to go there 5 days and I'm going to be there an hour a day. And also pairing with a gentle or a minimum. At a minimum, I'm going to go to the gym once a week for 15 minutes. Like, it really doesn't matter, but building in that grace, because what I've noticed this behavior for myself and a lot of my coaching clients is it's all or nothing. And if it's Thursday and you haven't gone to the gym, and then you're like, well, my goal was 3 days a week, and so I'm not going to make it because I didn't go today and it's midnight. Well, I just won't go on Friday and Saturday, and I'll start again on Sunday with my goal. That idea of that it has to be all or nothing, it doesn't serve anyone, especially not ourselves. So giving ourselves that grace and that we're doing the best with what we know in the moment. I have more to share, but I feel like you want to interject and say something about that right now.
Well, I think that that's great wisdom, right? Because and we both love Tiffany, and I think that, and again, for our listeners, I want you to understand what Deonne just said. And she said there's a minimum. I can tell you the minimum's a minute. Drop down. So I'll use exercise as an example. A minute before you climb into bed, drop down and do 10 push-ups. It's not that hard. It builds, it gets your self-confidence going. It gets momentum back. It gets you back in the game. And the next day, if the best you got is 5 minutes on a treadmill, or 5 minutes going up and down stairs in your house, or 5 minutes running around your garage, whatever that looks like, just make the move, right? Just do something to get back in the game, because sitting on the sidelines, nothing's going to happen, right? When you're doing nothing. I said this, somebody interviewed me in a podcast, and this just, I talk about flowing out of you. The wisdom flew out of me that nothing works until you do, right? And so you have to do the work. And the other thing is, forgive yourself. It's okay. Deonne said something, and I want you to catch this too. We are all doing the best we know how with what we know right now, with exactly where we're at. If we knew something better, and this is very powerful for forgiveness for other people, everybody's doing the best they can with what they know. If they knew something better, they'd be doing something better, but they don't. So they're going to go back to the bar again on the way home from work tonight and drink, because that's just the best they know right now. And when we can find them in that space and love them in that space as leaders, right? This is true of our children. This is true of our spouses. This is true of our coworkers. This is true of our vendors, of other business partners. Everybody's doing the best they can. They really are. And it might not be what we think is the best, but in their mind, their heart, it's the best they got. So I'd like you to talk about how the connectedness of, if you pick one, it's going to move everything.
Yeah. Well, and I do want to add to that last thought, which is choose your hard, right? Because going to the gym, for me, not easy. Or I can choose to have my hard be in 20 or 30 years. If I haven't gone to the gym for 20 or 30 years, that's going to be a lot harder. So the idea of
Wait,
choosing
say that again. That's profound wisdom. Say that again,
right?
please.
Yeah, choose your hard, whether it's in relationship or going to the gym. So going to the gym every day is not easy. Or you can choose to have hard in 30 years where you don't have a body of health. In a relationship, you can choose to invest, like you suggested, the 5 hours a week. By the way, I listened to that podcast that you sent me. It was phenomenal. So you can choose to invest in the relationship that you're in right now, or you can choose to not invest, and chances are you're going to end up divorced. Like, what is the hard that you want to experience? And being mindful of that, where do you put your time and energy and attention? What matters to you? What is your calendar and your time and your energy? Is it going to the things that you say are important? If you say your relationship is important, then you should be spending time and money and energy there. If your health is important, same. Because otherwise, you're going to choose a hard that's maybe not the one you want in a year or 2 or 10.
Right. And so Deonne, I love you. You're just killing it. So one of the things, Deonne just dropped 2 more golden nuggets. And I'd like to, for those of you that are listening, you can choose your heart. And I want to pick money. You can be spending your money on everything and anything you want now. And then your heart in the future is you're going to work till the day you die because you never saved any money. Or you can pick that hard now, rein yourself in, live by a budget, and then later on, life's a whole lot different, and now you're working on something else that's your own hard. Here's something else Deonne just shared, and this is an inside thing, but I'm gonna shine the light on my relationship with Deonne. I shared a podcast with her. I can tell you that there's some of you listening to this that know me, and I did not share that podcast with you. It's not that I don't love you. It's that I realize that you may be in a place where it's probably not going to land and have the effect that it did with Deonne. And I just want to bring this into your awareness of I'm blessed to have lots of people like Deonne in my life. And so when I come across a great resource, whether that's a book, a podcast, sometimes a song, Deonne and I are both musicians. By the way, she's just an extraordinary piano player. If you ever get the chance to listen to her play piano, I tried to set up a gig, but she backed out. That's a story for another day. But my point is that are the people in your life sharing resources with you, resources that are going to uplift you? Deonne's book it's one of the reasons why I had her back. Deonne's book is a resource that's going to change your life. Now, it's not a magic book. You have to do the push-ups, right? You have to do the work. But it's a resource I wanted all of you to be exposed to because it will move the needle. Regardless of what area of your life you want to be better or that you're struggling with, it will move the needle. And it's a resource. So are the people in your life giving you resources that are moving the needle in a positive direction? Are they not giving you resources? And that alone moves the needle in the opposite direction. Because again, I love your time and energy and money, right? What if you're spending time and energy and money with chuckleheads who are hanging out in bars, then your priority is now out of whack. Your core values aren't in alignment.
At least not aligned with what I want in my life, right?
Right. Yeah. Very good. That's a great point. You know, if your core value is to party and not ever worry about the future, then you're right. That could be in direct alignment with their core values.
Yeah. So then I think your next question was about how everything's right. The
Connected,
way you do
yes.
one thing is how you do everything. And in my book, I share that it's why I make my bed 98% of the time. There's probably a day or two I miss, and that giving myself grace on that is okay. But it is my reminder to myself and to something larger than me. I have a beautiful bed, beautiful home. I'm going to take care of what you have given me. Same reason why I take care of my body. Same reason why I take care of my relationships, my health. Everything is connected. And what tends to happen as people focus on one area of their life that they want to improve, everything else tends to spiral upward. If you're more mindful of how you're spending your money, you're going to be more mindful about the food that goes into your body. You're going to be more mindful about your relationships. So for me, it feels like it doesn't matter what thing you pick. It can be relationships, it can be your money, it can be food, health, joy. Just hop on the spiral and intentionally measure 1 or 2 things, because what you measure matters, and your entire world is going to spiral in a really For me, it feels like a tornado in a really beautiful way.
Well, I think, like I said, excuse me, having been such dear friends for so long, you look like, to me, from the outside, it's like you've caught the rocket, right? You're on a
Mhm.
rocket ship right up. But
Mhm.
and that's the same thing. I was just listening to a podcast about with Kevin Hart on the Diary of a CEO. I love that podcast, by the way. Diary of a CEO. He's got some great people on there, great perspectives. But one of the things that I think people don't understand is also the patience, right?
Mhm.
Like Kevin Hart spent 14 years just working his butt off in comedy clubs. And so to catch the rocket ride, you've got to be consistent and patient and realize that you're gonna catch it, but not if you give up.
Mhm. Because you've got to plant the seed and then water the seed and then bring the sunshine. And in my very last chapter of my book, I actually talk about this, the bamboo plant.
Yes.
It takes some forms of bamboo 10 years to germinate. Imagine being a bamboo farmer and you're just watering this and you're hoping that it's germinating. And I think about this with my own life. I feel like I'm a bamboo plant. It took me years to germinate and get the right water and soil and everything else. And then when it starts breaking through the ground, it can go 3 feet in a day. That's so fast that you can watch it with your human eye.
Yeah. The naked eye. Yeah.
Yep. And so I don't, maybe you're a fern, maybe you're a pine tree. Like, I don't know. But that analogy of being a bamboo plant, Kevin Hart, 14 years of being in various comedy clubs, but sticking with it is so critical for the success that most people want to experience in their life.
So I want to share something with you, experience I just recently had. I think I was out on a walk, and this huge pine tree, there was a couple of them next to each other, but at the very top of this pine tree was just that one single branch, right? That like kind of like a Christmas tree. It was that very one that you'd put the star on. And then it just came into my awareness that a couple of things. And again, I want you, as leaders, I want you to understand the power of what hit me in this moment. And I love that you brought this up with the bamboo, because it just it's years. And this pine tree, same thing. It had to be years, because it had to be 30 or 40 feet high. And so at that point, it was at the peak was just this one little branch. And it made me think about leadership. One, it made me think about, sometimes it's lonely at the top, right? Sometimes when you're the one that's the bravest to lead the way, to have the core values, whatever that might be, it's lonely. But also understand that behind you, underneath you, beside you is this foundation, the the, the core of the tree, right? The branches and the trunk and all of that is still there behind you, but it took you a while to get to that point. You reached for something. What do you got?
Well, and I also think at the top, right, that little part of the pine tree is really flexible and malleable. It's not super strong. Like, it's learning new things. And I think that's true for leaders as well. Like,
Oh,
it's like, I don't know exactly what I'm doing, but I'm getting out of my comfort zone. I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm stretching, and give yourself a minute to catch up. And then you're going to continue growing. And things that were hard 6 months ago, a year ago, are going to be normal. But it's that continuous growth, right?
yeah. It's that continuous growth, and it's also the importance of understanding that, when you do something consistently, you're going to get better at it, right?
Yes.
Everything's a learnable skill, literally everything. You and I both are musicians. At some point, we couldn't play a note. Well, we could play one note, but we couldn't play, what we're capable of now. And I think it's that perspective that life's really the marathon, not the sprint.
Mm-hmm.
And I love your awareness of, and the analogy of, at the top of that thing, it's wide open, right? You're a little floppy, but you're open to learn and take on new roles, new responsibility, new learning, new challenges, new adventures. It's very intuitive as well. As usual, this time has flown by. I'd like, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you would like to talk about or share with our listeners?
There is one more because I cannot overemphasize the importance of cultivating joy in your life. And I shared how this book came to be after sitting at the piano for 3 hours. And I also wrote a children's book, if that's not the cutest book on the planet. Um, it's called Love from Head to Toe. It's coming out soon, probably May or June. And I want to share the story how this came to be. I took a trip to Dubai. I was there for a couple of days. I was leading a humanitarian trip in Nepal for a week after that. And then I stopped in Paris on my way home for 4 or 5 days. It was a great trip. But what was interesting for me in that trip, anytime I travel, I tend to get downloads because I'm disconnected from the regular hubbub. I don't turn on the TV. Like it's really a time for a lot of inner reflection and awareness. And when I came out of my hotel in Dubai, there was an elephant. And I'll try to make this story somewhat short. When I was in Nepal, somebody gave me a coffee cup that had an elephant on it. I bought a scarf for my daughter in law. Oh, guess what? Elephants on there. I bought a cute little carved box intentionally for my granddaughter because it had 3 elephants. And I thought, oh, this is your mom and dad and yourself. It wasn't until I got to Paris and went into a vintage clothing shop and tried on a coat, put my hand in the pocket, and there was a coin in there, and it was a car wash token that had an elephant on it. And I'm sometimes a little bit slow, but in that moment, it was quickly like, oh, elephant, 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 elephant. I thought that's fascinating. There's something here. And I just kind of let it percolate and set in my heart. And then I came home a day or two later, and this was another one of those, the muse is tapping on your shoulder. Oh, you should write a children's book. It should be intentional way for parents to connect, or caregivers or grandparents to connect with their little in their life, where it's focusing on the body parts. Like this one says, bless your back. May it help you stand strong. It should be watercolored by somebody who is not using AI because I wanted the imperfections that come from watercolor.
Yeah.
And that book came out of me in about 2 days, maybe even a day. Like I knew the concept, and now it's been a year and a half in the making. And it's kind of been fun to just enjoy the journey and let it come to fruition when it's ready to not force it.
Yeah. And so, again, for you listeners and your leaders out there, I want you to understand that often we hear somebody like Deonne speak and we think, well, yeah, she can do that, but it'll never work for me. Nothing's further from the truth. But I want you to understand that Deonne has done her push-ups. She's put in the time working on herself, meditation, prayer, exercise, journaling, reading, learning. And so you can do the same thing. And again, it starts to become a snowball going down a hill, right? Once you, and just add, one of the things that I've understood is that, when you just add one thing, even if it takes you all month, if it's like you said, as simple as making your bed, for the next month, just make your bed. When you get out of it every morning, make your bed. And then once you got that down, add another one, right? Get out of your bed, make your bed. So I get out of my bed. First thing I do is 20 push-ups every morning. I do 20 push-ups. And then, so what my point is that then it starts to stockpile, right? And it just becomes this momentum of like the picture for me, the visual is a snowball going down a hill. It just picks up momentum and it picks up more and more mass because you just add one thing and one thing and one thing. And then bam, before you know it, you're in a place where Deonne's at, where you download a book and it just happens. And so is there
I
anything
think
that, go ahead.
I want to say, I think that's important to even drive home a little bit more solidly because people meet me and they think, oh, she looks a certain way, she acts a certain way, she has a certain amount of confidence. It has been doing those push ups, doing those reps. People don't see that I used to weigh 80 pounds more than I am today. People don't see that I had a period of my life where I literally could not get out of my bed, struggling with depression. People don't see that I've been married and divorced twice unless I bring that up on the podcast. But I share that because I think it's important, the power of sharing our stories and letting our light shine and saying, sometimes my life has been a dumpster fire. And right now, I love my life. And that is not something that I could have ever imagined myself saying 15 years ago.
I love you. I love your transparency. And so for those of you listening, I want you to catch this too. We all have had our dumpster fires. And I can tell you that I know Deonne well enough to know, I hope there's not, but it's a thing called life. There's probably a dumpster fire somewhere out there in her future. I'm in the middle of one of my dumpster fires. As you go through more dumpster fires and you learn how to navigate the darkness, the pain, the suffering, whatever you want to call it, the next dumpster fire isn't as traumatic. It's not as overwhelming. It's not as stressful because you know that there's a path. And that's, again, I'm going to highly recommend that you go get Deonne's book because it's really a workbook to help you navigate through dumpster fires. And I love that term, by the way, dumpster fires, because it's just such a great visual, right? There's just a pile of shit and it's all on fire.
Yep.
And
And pretty soon, you know where the fire extinguisher is, or you know where the fire hydrant is, or you know how to rally the troops and say, there's a big dumpster fire. I need help. And
yeah,
so I guess I'll end with, the book is super helpful, and people that want to go even deeper, feel free to reach out to me for workshops or private coaching or speaking engagements. Louie and I are in the same realm of just wanting to shed light on people. So in whatever way I can support your listeners or their organizations, I'm here for all of it.
perfect. Thank you. So how can listeners get a hold of you, Deonne?
The easiest way is on my website, Deonne, so Dr. Deonne, DRDEONNE.com. And you can subscribe to my Substack. My newsletter is there, as well as like a way to contact me, and it will shoot me an email.
Sounds good. And again, for our listeners, we'll put all that in the meeting notes. So Deonne, again, once again, what a true pleasure. I mean, it's just flown by. And I love you. And thanks again for being a guest on the podcast.
Thanks, Louie. Love you too.
Thanks again for joining us and listening to this episode of Leadership and Love. I would like to challenge you to ask yourself, what's one thing that you heard today that you can implement immediately to improve your leadership and accelerate your growth? If you've gotten value out of this episode or learned something that you can implement today, we'd ask that you please share it with those that you care about. Our goal is to create more leaders who are leading with love.